Hey, it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Hide and Q, the 10th episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, where Q makes Riker an offer he can't refuse. Now, I wanted to do a video on Q for a while now, and while this is a Q episode, the episode heavily focuses on Riker, so I guess this is more of a Riker video than a Q video. And a beardless Riker video at that. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Season 1, and Hide and Q does get a little goofy at times, but credit where credit is due. It does what Star Trek is known for, exploring different aspects of humanity with a moral at the end. In this case,
power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Or, in the wise words of the great sage Uncle Ben Parker,
with great power comes great responsibility.
So join me today as we near the end of the year for a little After Trek special as I revisit Hide and Q. But before I go any further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. Be great to have you aboard. The episode starts with dire circumstances. Troy has gone home to visit her mother.
Stop demeaning me and address me as an adult.
Oh yeah, and there's been a mining accident and people need medical attention. To say that there's a sense of urgency on the Enterprise is a bit of an understatement. It'd be a shame if something or someone were to hold them up.
Now, damn it, Q.
Yes, now, mon capitaine. Q appears and clearly the crew isn't happy to see him. For one thing, there's a little matter of the mining colony that needs help like yesterday.
Your species is always suffering and dying.
That's right, screw the mining colony. Q's got an offer for Picard. Which, by the way, Picard is willing to listen to and consider after they take care of the mining colony. But no, Q wants attention now. After all, why doesn't Picard trust him? Which Picard responds back with a whole summary of the first episode of the show, so you don't have to go back and suffer through rewatch the episode, all while using his Picard Season 1 outdoor voice.
Our first meeting, you seized my vessel. You condemned all humans as savages.
He does do a lot of yelling in that first season.
You claim to be a civilized world, and yet you've just committed an act of utter barbarity.
But, whatever, the Q Continuum has taken an interest in humans, and in particular, First Officer Babyface himself, Riker. And Riker, thinking like Ray Stantz thinking of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and Ghostbusters, chimes in with this.
We don't have time for these games.
Did someone say games?
Tried to think of the most harmless thing. Something I loved from my childhood. Something that could never, ever possibly destroy us.
Games.
Nice thinking, Ray.
So, thanks to a certain beardless first officer, Riker, Data, Worf, Tasha, and Geordi are whisked away to the planet of Echo the Dolphin backgrounds, with Picard stuck on the bridge of his ship alone, not allowed to join in the game.
Sorry, no homers.
Meanwhile, Q is dressed in a Marshal of France's uniform, which, as someone who knows a lot about the history of fashion, namely the 18th and 19th centuries, I would comment on his uniform, except that I'm not an expert in military fashion. But Q is styling, so there's that. And Q invites the beardless Riker over to his tent for a nice glass of lemonade.
Lemonade? Please.
Apparently, the Q Continuum is interested in what humans will become, and that they can find out a lot about humans by the way they play games. Q then decides the game's rules. Stay alive and everything is unfair. And then Q sends Tasha to the penalty box because life's not fair and neither is this game.
But it won't be boring.
Oh yeah, and if they break any of the rules and need to be penalized, Tasha will cease to exist. But at least it won't be boring.
But it won't be boring.
So what is this penalty box exactly?
What's in the box?
The Enterprise with a bored out of his mind Picard. Just what exactly are you implying about Jean-Luc there, Q?
I'm really quite dull.
So Tasha was put in timeout and starts to cry. Though to be fair, she might cease to exist at any moment.
What in the hell am I doing? Crying?
Picard comforts his security officer. After all, seeing the normally strong Tasha cry is probably an uncomfortable thing for him to witness. And in turn, Tasha hits on him?
Oh, if you weren't a captain.
Just how exactly were you gonna finish that sentence, Tasha? You're not even space drunk in this episode! But apparently, crying and hitting on a man old enough to be her father is enough to get Tasha out of the penalty box.
Penalty over.
So after Q makes a captain's log for Picard,
The Enterprise is now helpless, stuck like an Earth insect in amber.
and revealing that they're testing them to see if Riker is worthy of the greatest gift the Q continuum can give, Picard and Q make a wager. If Riker can resist the pull of the Q, Q leaves them alone forever. If not, it's Picard's command. Q takes the bet but insists that Picard has already lost.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
But what exactly is this game that Q keeps mentioning? Well, it's not super important to the plot, but basically, Riker, Geordi, Worf, and Data are fighting against
Vicious animal things.
dressed in 18th century attire and armed with muskets. Why the 18th century? Because Picard thought of it.
Nice thinking, Ray.
But it all seems too easy. After all, they have the fabulous Riker lean and their phasers.
Drop your weapons!
Okay, Worf, honey, did you just run into the line of fire just to shout, "Drop your weapon"?
A warrior's reaction.
Yeah, some warrior. Meanwhile, Picard and Q talk Shakespeare. Because why not?
All the galaxy is a stage. World, not galaxy. All the world's a stage.
Q quotes Macbeth, basically reiterating that how they play games will tell him more about humans than simply observing them. Even though Worf and Data aren't human. Picard shoots back with a little Hamlet in what he thinks humans are capable of becoming. Which I'm including here just because we can all stand to have a little Patrick Stewart Shakespeare in our lives.
What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty.
Back on the planet, the game isn't going so well. It turns out that those aren't muskets, they're rocket launchers. Q, in the form of Data, tells Riker to just send everyone back to the ship. No, not by beaming, the same way Q did, because Riker now has the power. Uh-oh, he's gone mad with power. Q has a one-on-one with Riker, explaining that he wants Riker to become a Q. The Continuum thought that humans were a bunch of savages, but realized that they're just unusual.
It's not unusual to be loved.
And that they'll keep growing beyond their limits. Who knows how far humans will advance? Not even the Continuum, which is why they want Riker to join up. A tempting offer, to be sure.
I don't even like you.
Rejected!
You're gonna miss me.
Q decides to quicken the negotiations by transporting the bridge crew down to the planet to get owned by the
Vicious animal things.
Worf Leroy Jenkins his way through it.
Leroy Jenkins!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
And gets impaled. And Wesley also gets impaled. No, boy, you're supposed to laugh it off. Are you even your father's son? But Riker can't take it anymore and uses his Q powers to get rid of
These animal things.
and transport everyone back to the bridge, topping it all off with a very smug expression. Picard, meanwhile, is probably thinking, oh crap, I'm so losing this bet. And a Q of all people.
No one has ever offered to turn me into a god before.
Picard warns Riker about using his new Q powers in the usual Picard manner. Basically, we're not advanced enough to use this power, so don't use the power.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Are you afraid that I'm gonna turn into some kind of criminal?
Riker, on the other hand, insists that he's strong enough to resist the power of the Q.
Then tell him I'm right.
And promises not to use his powers.
I won't fail you.
Finally, they reach the mining colony. And it's bad. And this is where Riker begins to doubt his promise to not use his powers. A girl was caught in the destruction and died just as Data dug her out of the rubble. Data suggests that Riker uses his power to revive her, but he can't because he made a promise. And he's...
I could have saved that child.
You were right not to try.
Jeez, Picard, that's pretty cold! I mean, don't get me wrong, I get where Picard is coming from here. Riker would become accustomed to that power, he may end up abusing it. But, Jean-Luc, have a little compassion! So Riker decides to go back on his promise and convince everyone that he's totally mature enough to embrace his new powers, which goes right to his head immediately. He's calling meetings, he's walking out on Picard mid-sentence, he's calling Picard Jean-Luc.
I've permitted you this gathering.
Of course, Jean-Luc.
What did you call me? The bridge crew and Wesley attend the meeting, and Riker insists that he's the same old Riker as before. With some sweet powers!
I'm the same William T. Riker you've always known.
That's great and all, but do us all a favor and use your powers to give yourself a magnificent beard.
The beard is an ancient and proud tradition.
Everyone else, of course, is super uncomfortable right now. Especially Jean-Luc over there.
And have you noticed how you and I are now on a first-name basis?
Picard observes that Riker has indeed changed since getting Q powers. Heck, even Tasha and Geordi suggest that perhaps the Continuum is more afraid of humans rather than admiring Riker. After all, he doesn't even have the magnificent beard yet. Q barges in Siberia 2 style just to tempt Riker to accept his offer, and Picard says flim-flam.
He's nothing but a flim-flam, man. Flim-flam.
Both Picard and Q challenge Riker to use his powers to give the crew what they want.
Shall I guess your dreams?
Things that would send cold chills down your spine. It is better you do not know.
Beverly tries to shoo Wesley out of the room because things are about to get weird. Wes becomes a man, but he's still wearing the same stupid sweater as before. Data refuses to be turned into a human, saying he doesn't want to live in illusion.
To thine own self be true.
What's with all the Shakespeare in this episode? Geordi is given his own show called Reading Rainbow.
But you don't have to take my word for it.
No, I'm kidding. He's given sight and sees how beautiful Tasha is before refusing sight altogether because the price is too damn high. Riker comes to Worf, who gets a sexy Klingon lady, which just freaks everybody out, including Worf.
Is this your idea of sex?
No, but it is Riker's. Wes even comes to refuse his gift of manhood because he'd rather get there on his own.
But it's easier, boy. Listen to Riker.
I mean, Q has a point. Puberty isn't exactly fun.
I feel like such an idiot.
Now, if this was season 3 Picard, he'd probably say something like, well, number one, who wouldn't have been tempted by such an offer? But even with the best of intentions, that power would eventually corrupt us, and we would become the very thing we detest. But no, this is season 1 Picard.
I feel like such an idiot.
Quite right, so you should.
Q vanishes in a scream. Picard remarks that the human equation is more complicated than time and space, and the Enterprise once again flies off into the distance. And that was Hyde and Q. For a season 1 episode, it's alright, but still flawed. It's like it tried to explore 2 different concepts, how we play defining who we are, and that power corrupts. Both concepts worth exploring. But the first got dropped halfway through the episode in favor of the other, and sadly, not much was said on how humans play. However, the episode does illustrate the idea of how gaining power so quickly, especially without the work, can easily corrupt someone. Even with the best of intentions, we would become too used to having that level of power, and without the maturity to handle it, become corrupt. It's an idea worth exploring, even throughout the entire show. But of course, the lesson Riker learned in this episode never comes up again. Heck, this basic plot was reused again in season 6 with Amanda Rogers. Riker could have counseled her on getting power suddenly, how it can easily corrupt you, how even good intentions sometimes aren't enough. But no, we get her crushing on Riker and putting him in, what the hell is with those lapels? Amanda, honey, we need to have a talk about historical accuracy. Also, I feel like of all the episodes for Troy to not appear in, she should have been in this one. It probably would have gotten even weirder on the bridge, but she knows Riker probably the best of anyone on board and maybe could have gotten through to him quicker than anyone else. I know I don't say this often because most of season 1 should be forgotten, but the events of this episode should have come up again, even in just a conversation or two. Sure, this isn't a particularly good episode, but it does have some good ideas and even a decent lesson at the end of it.
Perhaps they're all remembering that old saying.
With great power comes great responsibility.
So what do you think? What did you think of Hyde and Q? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you think the episode's message was executed well? Should it have come up later again in the show? And what are some other episodes you'd like to see me talk about? Please leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
Where are the games?